Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
It's Wednesday, May 28th, and you're tuned to The Grind with me, Art Grindstone. Hump Day never looked so sharp. Welcome back, night owls. I hope you're doing better than the half-dead office plant I just discovered under the studio window. Turns out even ferns can't survive a Monday memos dump. We've got 2 full hours to stretch, yawn, and take a long stare at the world's pressure points. First up tonight, we'll head to the Pacific Rim, where China's new Jiutian drone swarms fly in synchronized, self-healing packs, and the United States is trying to figure out whether to counter with patents or punch-outs. High-tech warfare, cyber feints, Arctic skullduggery. If you can weaponize it, somebody already has. Then we'll dig into a pair of conspiracies that refuse to stay buried. From 19th century city-burning infernos to modern wildfire truthers to AJ Gentile's Why Files Vault rocketing into Joe Rogan's podcast Barnstorm, we'll ask why mysteries age like wine while facts spoil like milk. Keep your tinfoil hats handy, because the data discrepancies are hotter than a communal grill in August. And finally, we kick lunar dust on the moon's south pole, where Interlune's behemoth excavator and China's nuclear research station could turn helium-3 into the next cartel commodity. Treaties are thin, ambitions are thick, and a 2027 deadline hangs over the whole celestial poker table. It's the biggest land grab in a place with no land and no sheriff. That's the rundown, plus whatever curveballs break during the broadcast. Grab a coffee, adjust your seatbelt, and silence the push notifications. The grind starts now. Let's get to it. Our first story launches with those autonomous drone swarms. Warfare now whispers in code and hovers on silent wings. Now that we're diving into this week's stories, let's start with high-tech warfare and hidden power plays. Last month, deep in the Gobi dusk, China's Jiutian SSUAV program loosed 120 smart drones into the sky, each no larger than a raven, yet packing cameras, jammers, and mesh radios. As one drone fell to a staged missile strike, the rest closed ranks within seconds, reshaping the formation without a single human command. State television hailed the maneuver as self-healing air power, a phrase that sent shivers through opposing analysts. According to Jane's Defense Weekly, the swarm can split into mini-packs, surround a target, and relay guidance for long-range missiles launched from far outside radar view. Military planners say the true leap is not hardware but software. Neural nets on each drone vote every half-second on who should lead, who should jam, and who should crash and sacrifice. The test redefines air superiority from a duel of pilots to a duel of algorithms, and that alarms capitals worldwide. Washington's immediate answer was a flash funding boost for its own Skyborg project, while Paris and Canberra opened a joint lab on drone ethics, fearing a nightmare where machines pick targets faster than treaties can protest. The United Nations group of governmental experts met in Geneva this spring, yet even delegates admitted the rules lag years behind the math. Insurance giants quietly rewrote war risk clauses, noting that swarms blur the line between accident and attack. If a drone uses stolen Wi-Fi to steer itself into a fuel depot, is that cyber sabotage or kinetic strike? Meanwhile, Polish engineers unveiled Hunter cubes, shoebox-sized interceptors designed to smash into hostile drones at close range, an aerial version of bumper cars with metal teeth. The race now feels less like an armed sprint and more like an evolving ecosystem. Predators, counter-predators, and digital parasites updating by the hour. That accelerating loop sets the stage for a broader shadow contest. South of the Arctic Circle, the United States and Canada find themselves pulling tighter against China in a covert chess match that spans sea ice, fiber optic lines, and energy claims. Ottawa recently blocked a Chinese state-linked firm from buying a struggling nickel mine in Nunavut, citing security concerns. Within a week, Royal Canadian Mounted Police computers were hit by a sophisticated phishing wave traced by CrowdStrike to servers in Shenzhen. American cyber teams joined the cleanup, only to discover hidden beacon code already embedded inside ice monitoring buoys near the Northwest Passage. The buoys feed data on shipping lanes and potential oil pockets. Tampering could let Beijing map routes or trigger false ice warnings that slow rival tankers. Diplomats call it nuisance probing, but naval officers speak of gray zone warfare, the realm between treaty peace and open conflict. From seafloor cables to mining mergers, each move reads like a bid to shape the high north before melting ice turns theory into trade routes. And that competition bleeds into space as well. Cislunar space, the vast orbital highway between Earth and the Moon, now hosts more sensors than ever, many flying under civilian banners while feeding military dashboards. United States Space Command warns that small Chinese relay satellites parked near Lagrange points could listen to deep space traffic and even blind telescopes with targeted light bursts. Beijing retorts that the Pentagon's new Capella array, a string of radar CubeSats, can map ground objects at night to an accuracy of 0.5 meter. The same software that guides drone swarms on Earth could soon manage swarms of microsats, nudging debris into orbits that block rivals. Add in deepfake propaganda seeded by AI chatbots, and the battlefield extends into minds as much as skies. Security scholars argue that influence ops will ride the same bandwidth as lunar telemetry. One corrupted protocol update might switch off a rover or switch on a rumor. In this entangled domain, an Arctic buoy breach, a drone maneuver, and a satellite shuffle all form facets of one larger pattern: pressure without fingerprints. Standing back, we see a contest fought in silence. Silent drones, silent under ice cables, silent code pulses in the dark between worlds. The challenge for democracies is not merely to match hardware, but to craft rules and resilience before the next self-healing swarm roams free. Citizens, ask how your data, your airspace, and even your night sky fit into the new defense map. Because the frontier now touches every phone tower and every moonlit horizon. Next, we'll shift to domestic power struggles and celebrity justice.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Economic fears collide with celebrity intrigue tonight. From global conflict, we turn to domestic power struggles and courtroom drama. Canada woke to flashing red graphs this week as Statistics Canada reported a second straight quarter of negative growth, tipping the country toward what economists politely label a technical recession. Mortgage resets in Toronto and Vancouver now gulp 1/3 of an average household's income, while grocery inflation still hovers near 7%. Business host Jordan White on CBC Radio asked whether the nation is skating down the road to serfdom, borrowing a phrase from economist Friedrich Hayek that seized headlines across talk shows. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre seized the line, warning that lavish federal spending will turn citizens into debt-bound tenants of the state. The metaphor stuck because it pairs anxiety over rising rents with fear of shrinking paychecks. Yet beyond the sound bites lies a quieter statistic. 94% of Canadians still support some version of government-run healthcare, a figure that complicates the doom narrative. That tension between alarm and attachment sets up our look back at how Canadian social democracy actually works. Scroll through history and you find that redistributive policies are woven into the maple leaf more tightly than any modern slogan suggests. In 1947, Premier Tommy Douglas introduced universal hospital coverage in Saskatchewan, planting seeds that blossomed into nationwide Medicare by 1966. The program endured recessions, oil crashes, and the fiscal austerity of the 1990s, largely because voters saw it as insurance rather than charity. When pundits invoke Hayek's slippery slope, they often ignore that Canada ranks below Germany and France in public spending as a share of GDP, notes the Globe and Mail. Economists at McGill University argue that the greater threat is not serfdom, but a service squeeze, as aging populations stretch budgets while political rhetoric discourages targeted tax hikes. If Ottawa slashes spending to calm debt hawks, provinces might download costs to municipalities, driving up property taxes in a backdoor way. That fiscal shell game fuels the anxiety loop which headlines thrive on, and the loop extends beyond economics into pop culture courtrooms. Enter Sean Diddy Combs, a man who built a 3-decade empire on beats, vodka, and reality TV, now fighting a racketeering indictment that reads like a mob novel. Federal prosecutors allege the hip-hop mogul funneled royalties through shell companies tied to the Genovese crime family in Newark, laundering proceeds from concert tours and private label liquor sales. New to the public docket is a wiretap from 2022 in which a voice identified as Big Anthony promises to clear the path for Combs arena permits in exchange for a slice of merch profits. Diddy's lawyers call the tape audio deepfake garbage, yet the Justice Department says watermarked timestamps confirm authenticity. More sensational is a claim that the music star offered backstage passes to a sitting senator staffer, nicknamed online as the Senate Twink, A 20-something aide photographed in designer loafers at Combs' Miami yacht party. Prosecutors stopped short of charging bribery, but the detail feeds a tabloid frenzy that asks whether political favors flowed alongside champagne. The trial's gritty mix of beats and backroom deals primes social media for meme warfare. TikTok lit up within minutes of the indictment, stitching courtroom sketches with clips from Diddy's 2001 hit Bad Boy for Life, rebranded as Mafioso for Life. Twitter, now formerly X, revived the Senate twink tag, spawning cartoons of a wide-eyed intern balancing law books and caviar. Misinformation springs eternal. One viral post claimed the aide helped draft housing legislation that secretly benefits Combs' real estate fund. No such clause exists, but the tweet gathered 80,000 likes before fact-checkers could reply. Media scholars at Ryerson University note that meme culture compresses complex legal issues into character tropes, framing trials as streaming dramas with weekly cliffhangers. Meanwhile, legal analysts warn that jurors, even when sequestered, absorb ambient narratives through friends and relatives, making meme velocity a soft weapon in the courtroom arsenal. This swirl of half-truths and hashtags echoes the Canadian recession debate, where captivating labels often outrun patient policy talk. Connections between money, power, and public perception grow tighter by the post. Taken together, Canada's rumbling debt discourse and Diddy's headline trial spotlight a common lesson. Modern power hides in plain sight, cloaked by catchy phrases and viral images that shape beliefs faster than spreadsheets or sworn testimony. When Road to Serfdom meets Senate twink, earnest policy debate tangles with pop theatrics, and citizens must sift through the noise to find the signal. Keep an eye on the Bank of Canada rate decision next month, and on whether prosecutors can link those yacht party favors to legislative muscle. Each story tests how well institutions guard against panic, propaganda, and private deals struck after midnight. Stay tuned for our final news segment on conspiracies and cultural mysteries.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Some fires burn longer in memory than they did in wood. Moving from justice to shadowy narratives, here's our last news segment. Walk the cobbled lanes near Pudding Lane in London, and tour guides still debate whether sparks from Thomas Farriner's bakery could really have leveled 13,000 homes in 1666. Official tallies say only 6 people died. Yet parish records list dozens of missing laborers, fueling a centuries-old hunch that officials downplayed the toll to dodge blame for slow firefighting. Hop across the Atlantic to 1776 New York, where flames ripped through 1/3 of Manhattan just days after George Washington's retreat. British commanders accused rebel saboteurs. Patriots swore the Redcoats torched their own quarters to clear sniper hides. Fresh research from Queen's College finds demolition charges embedded in 2 surviving beams, hinting that someone hastened the blaze. The lack of conclusive evidence lets demolition theories thrive on Reddit threads titled London's Controlled Burn and Manhattan's First False Flag, setting the stage for today's wildfire conspiracies. Fast forward to our era of satellite loops, and still the embers of doubt glow hot. When Maui's Lahaina district burned last summer, Facebook posts claimed laser bursts from orbit started the blaze, citing blue roofs left intact while red ones charred. Fire experts explain that blue paint reflects infrared heat, but the meme outran the Mythbusters by 200,000 shares. In Northern California, volunteer rescuers were harassed at checkpoints after messages warned that federal agents were stealing land under the smoke. Sociologists at the University of British Columbia note that climate anxiety pairs with distrust in government budgets, producing a vacuum that conspiracy content fills. The irony is stark. Never have we had so many thermal cameras and wind models. Yet the swirl of data lets believers cherry-pick anomalies that fit preheated plots. That data fog primes audiences for storytellers who promise clarity with a wink, which brings us to a podcast host who built a brand on asking, "What if?" Enter a J. Gentile, the cheerful voice behind the Y-Files. Now one of the most downloaded mystery shows on Spotify. Gentile's formula is part journalism, part campfire tale. Spend 40 hours combing declassified memos and peer-reviewed papers, then let his sardonic fish puppet, Hecklefish, poke holes in weak sources so listeners feel like co-investigators. The approach struck a chord with Joe Rogan's audience this spring. During a 3-hour episode, Gentile broke down competing theories on the Dyatlov Pass hikers, citing Soviet autopsy photos while Rogan peppered him with MMA-style "show me the receipts" challenges. Chartable reports the appearance boosted the Y-Files to a record 2.5 million weekly streams, with 58% of new listeners under 35. Gentile insists he is not a truther, but a curator. "I stack the puzzle pieces on the table. You decide which picture forms." That invitation to weigh evidence, real or fringe, feels empowering amid algorithmic overload. Yet empowerment can tilt into echo chambers, so the medium's rise deserves a closer look. Mystery podcasts occupy a sweet spot where entertainment, skepticism, and social identity converge. Episodes drop like serialized novels, giving audiences time to swap theories on Discord and TikTok, each platform feeding the next with micro clips and eager watch lists. Media analysts liken the cycle to participatory folklore. Listeners quote a statistic out of context, someone corrects it, the debate itself becomes lore, and the story mutates. In this loop, even debunking can keep a myth alive, because arguments refresh the feed's sense of suspense. Tech giants struggle to moderate without appearing to censor, so they label content instead, a digital equivalent of parents saying maybe when the child asks if monsters exist. Meanwhile, print historians worry that selective storytelling erodes nuance. One minute you hear about firefighting buckets, the next, a laser beam is trending. The Y-Files blend of citations and satire tries to bridge that gap, but its popularity shows how craving for mystery competes with the slow grind of archival research. Stepping back, we see the same pattern that animated Great Fire demolition tales and modern wildfire laser rumors. Gaps in data invite narrative heat, which then spreads faster than facts can follow. So as night settles and our screens glow, remember that curiosity is a spark. Handle it like open flame. question blue roof anomalies, cross-read casualty lists, and enjoy puppet banter, but keep a mental firebreak between speculation and conclusion, because tomorrow's conspiracies gestate in today's unanswered questions, and each click fans or dampens the blaze. Next, we embark on our deep investigation into lunar helium-3 mining.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Every gold rush begins with the gleam of a new tool. Now, let's shift from our news hour to a deep investigation. In a converted Boeing hangar outside Seattle, venture-backed firm Interlune rolled out a steel beast the size of a school gym, its 110-ton-per-hour lunar regolith excavator. Engineers cheered as twin drum cutters spun through a sandbox laced with basalt, simulating the moon's powdery soil. Unlike Earth diggers that rely on weight and hydraulics, this prototype uses opposing augers that cancel recoil so it can bite into low-gravity ground without bouncing. High-frequency sensors map pebble clusters 10 centimeters ahead, adjusting blade torque in microseconds. Chief Executive Dr. Rachel Navarro told reporters the machine will be disassembled, loaded onto a Starship cargo flight in early 2027, and reassembled robotically near Mare Tranquillitatis. There it must scoop and sift non-stop for 60 hours to prove commercial throughput. Investors include the Bezos Earth Fund and an unlikely partner, Caterpillar, which sees lunar mining as the next frontier for autonomous fleets. The unveiling did more than show hardware. It signaled that private industry plans to claim and monetize what once belonged only to poets and astronauts, a point that ripples through every other detail in tonight's story. Why sift all that gray dust? Hidden in the fine grains is helium-3, a non-radioactive isotope hailed as the champagne fuel of future fusion reactors. Unlike the deuterium-tritium mix used in today's test chambers, helium-3 fusion produces almost no stray neutrons, which means less wear on reactor walls and far simpler waste disposal. Scientists at the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory estimate that 25 tons of the isotope could power the entire United States for a year. Yet Earth holds barely enough to fill a beach ball. Lunar soil, baked for billions of years by solar wind, might contain 1 million tons scattered in parts per billion flecks. Even if only 1% proves recoverable, the prize could outshine the rare earth market many times over. Quantum chip makers are equally keen. Helium-3 can cool processors to fractions of a degree, above absolute zero, unlocking qubit stability. Add up the fusion dreams, the quantum circuits, and the bragging rights of planting a terrestrial economy on another world, and you get valuation pitches that toss around figures like $6.3 billion for the first sustainable supply chain. That promise revs the engines of nations as well as startups, setting the scene for a rival power's bold answer. 7,000 miles away in Beijing, the State Council quietly approved a 10-megawatt nuclear reactor to be flown piecemeal to the moon's south pole by 2029. The reactor will anchor China's International Lunar Research Station, planned for a crater rim that enjoys near-constant sunlight, but more importantly, overlooks shadowed valleys rich in water ice and helium-3. Cooling loops will pipe liquid sodium through modular radiators, doubling as heat sinks for on-site refining of volatile gases. State media quotes project lead Professor Yang Hu as saying, "Energy security on the moon is sovereignty." The phrase raised eyebrows in Washington, Paris, and New Delhi, where diplomats recall that the Outer Space Treaty bars sovereign claims. Yet the technical logic is hard to fault. A reactor means round-the-clock power for excavators, life support domes, and microwave transmitters that could beam electricity to surface rovers. Chinese officials promise open scientific collaboration, but leaked tender documents obtained by Reuters list quotas for helium-3 exports earmarked for state-owned reactor companies. Pair that with an aggressive launch cadence, 3 heavy cargo rockets per year, and the South Pole base starts to look less like a research shack and more like a vertically integrated mining colony. The move intensifies scrutiny on how, or whether, the world will share lunar spoils. Enter the looming Lunar Governance Accord, a treaty in draft mode at the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, slated for signing in 2027. Its framers hope to extend the 1967 Outer Space Treaty by clarifying commercial resource rights, environmental duties, and dispute arbitration. Early language proposes a collective heritage fee, a small royalty on extracted materials that would fund climate adaptation projects back on Earth. But working groups already split over enforcement. Interlune and its American allies favor light regulation, arguing that strict permits could scare investors away during the risky early years. China and Russia urge heavier oversight, perhaps because they can afford the red tape. Middle-income nations demand equitable access corridors to high-value craters and better data sharing from orbital scanners. Without consensus, legal scholars warn of a first-to-dig norm, after which any new treaty would fight established facts on the regolith. Watching from the wings are insurers, bond traders, and commodity exchanges, gaming out futures contracts that could soar or crash on a single clause change. Thus, the accord is not just fine print. It is the invisible hand gripping every drill handle and reactor switch we have just described. As spotlights fade in that Seattle hangar and as lunar reactor modules roll off assembly lines in Guangdong, one question glows brighter than any other. Will helium-3 become humanity's shared catalyst or its next cartel commodity? The answer depends on how quickly diplomats can hammer policy around prototypes already shipping to launch pads. In Part 2, we trade today's blueprints for tomorrow's scenarios, mapping how safety zones might sprawl into de facto borders and how dust plumes could spark standoffs. In Part 2, we'll dive into speculative land grab scenarios and contested safety zones.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
maps decide destiny long before boots hit dust. Having raised the stakes, let's plunge deeper into potential lunar land grab scenarios. Picture Interlune's project manager, tablet in hand, watching a countdown clock labeled Prospecting Window, July 2027. That date marks the firm's first scout mission, a trio of suitcase rovers that will sniff for helium, 3 hotspots along Mare Tranquillitatis. If readings top 2 parts per billion, a follow-up drill platform lands in early 2028 to core samples 6 meters deep, proving that the loose topsoil isn't the only pay layer. Make that milestone, and Washington's Department of Energy unlocks a contingent purchase agreement. 1.0 tons of helium, 3 delivered to a future fusion test bed in New Mexico by the end of 2029. In exchange, the agency offers a price floor of $4 million per kilogram, a number that delights investors, yet terrifies fuel cycle skeptics. Interlune's internal slide deck, leaked to Bloomberg, charts a flywheel of success: prospect, harvest, sell, reinvest, repeat, until a steady stream of gray dust feeds rockets and reactors back home. But every flywheel needs a stable launch pad, and that's where real estate politics crash the party. China's Chang'e 8 probe, due in late 2028, aims at a sun-washed ridge near Shackleton Crater, so close to presumed water ice that engineers joke they could ski downhill to refuel. Onboard printers will sinter local soil into landing pads, welding grains with focused sunlight to avoid rooster-tail plumes that might blind later crafts. Data from this mission will feed the International Lunar Research Station, a joint endeavor with Russia, Venezuela, and perhaps South Africa, slated to break ground in 2030. The roadmap lists greenhouses, an oxygen plant, and a helium-3 concentrator able to refine 5 kilograms per year by mid-decade. Beijing frames the plan as public science, yet internal policy papers, summarized by the South China Morning Post, treat resources as strategic reserves. One memo even proposes bartering helium, 3 shipments for rare earth oxides earthside, effectively turning the moon into a swap meet for critical minerals. As the timelines converge, Interlune scooping in the equatorial east while China drills in the southern highlands, cartographers overlay circles on craters, each labeled Safety Zone. The innocent term carries consequences. Safety zones began as a polite footnote in the Artemis Accords, meant to protect fragile gear from dust spray and engine blasts. Set a perimeter of, say, 2 kilometers, warn others before you fire thrusters, and everyone goes home happy. In practice, a zone can sprawl like suburban lawns. If Interlune strings 5 modular processing sheds in a line, it may claim a buffer wrapping the whole chain like shrink wrap, blocking rival rovers from a swath the size of Manhattan. China's South Pole site, hemmed by crater walls and perpetual shadow, might justify an even wider exclusion for thermal safety, creating a fence few diplomats could verify in real time. Layer on antenna interference fears, seismic concerns about nearby drilling, and the patchwork resembles a board game where players advance by staking circles that never quite touch, yet leave no room for late arrivals. Legal scholars call this functional sovereignty, a slow creep toward ownership without planting a flag. As one analyst quipped to the Financial Times, it's like squatting in a library seat until people assume you checked out the whole floor, which raises the question, what happens when 2 safety circles collide? Imagine this standoff in 2031. Interlune's autonomous hauler lumbers toward a ridge that Chinese surveyors also flagged for its high helium-3 gradient. Alerts flash in mission control centers 9 time zones apart. The American rover insists it is on a pre-filed route. The Chinese system counters that dust kicked up could degrade a nearby solar farm. There is no lunar traffic cop, only cross-talking satellites and lawyers waving PDFs of orbital notices. A compromise path might add 40 minutes to each haul cycle, dropping daily yield below profit break-even. Investors watching the live feed spike the company's stock into a roller coaster, while hawkish commentators invoke the Monroe Doctrine applied to space. A single collision, even at walking speed, could snap antennas worth $10 million and spray debris that orbits for decades, a shrapnel cloud no one wants. With cargo loan covenants tied to uptime targets, the financial pressure to stand firm grows. This hypothetical clash shows how economics, not nationalism alone, might drive the first lunar confrontation, especially when contracts on Earth fine companies for missing gram-level quotas. Such tensions underscore why the upcoming Lunar Governance Accord must grapple with enforcement tools stronger than polite notifications. For now, firms draft backup plans, side-channel radio links to reroute vehicles, insurance riders that treat safety zone disputes as force majeure, even on-board AI mediators trusted to negotiate path compromises in milliseconds. But code is only as good as the rules it follows, and those rules remain penciled, not inked. Until diplomats convert lines on a map into law with teeth, every excavator, reactor, and rover is a pawn in a cosmic land rush where caution tape doubles as a border post. Next, in Part 3, we'll resolve the debate with treaties, cartel risks, and solutions.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, you know, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Laws as old as dial radios govern tomorrow's moon. Now that we've tracked scenarios and speculations, let's land on the key takeaways. First, the legal bedrock. The United Nations Outer Space Treaty of 1967 was written when colored television felt futuristic and astronauts still practiced emergency sextant sightings. The treaty laid down 2 noble lines. No nation may claim sovereignty beyond Earth, and space shall be used for peaceful purposes. But it ducked the messy question of mining. It treats resources like seashells on an open beach, free to pick up, yet silent on ownership once shells become currency. It also offers no referee if drills chew into competing claims, and no penalties if a state ignores courtesy. Lawyers call it a framework, not a fence. That gap leads directly to the patchwork of later promises, creating our next concern. Enter the Artemis Accords, a set of voluntary agreements championed by Washington since 2020. Think of them as a neighborly handshake. Share data, avoid harmful interference, and flag safety zones so your rockets don't blast my lander. 42 nations have signed, but the accords carry no courtroom muscle. A violator risks only diplomatic frowns and maybe a canceled ride on someone's launch manifest. China and Russia remain outside the club, citing bias toward American partners. Even within the group, interpretations vary. Japan reads the safety zone clause as a tight bubble around hardware, while Australia sketches wide arcs to protect local ecosystems of ice deposits. These diverging sketches mirror the speculative standoffs we discussed last night and reveal why a stronger charter is racing the clock. That charter is the proposed Lunar Governance Accord. Draft negotiators plan to unveil the accord in early 2027, hoping to bind at least 2/3 of United Nations members before the first commercial harvests begin. The blueprint circulated in Vienna last month includes a 3-tier enforcement ladder. Tier 1 is mandatory pre-registration of surface activities with orbital tracking data open to all signatories, similar to maritime automatic identification systems. Tier 2 establishes a fast-track tribunal that can order temporary shutdowns within 48 hours of a dispute, enforced by insurance voids that no operator can ignore. Tier 3, the sharpest edge, empowers an escrow fund to freeze helium-3 shipments at Earth orbit depots if fines go unpaid. Funding comes from a 1% heritage royalty on extracted mass, earmarked for climate adaptation projects in countries with zero space budgets, aligning lunar wealth with terrestrial need. Critics from Silicon Valley grumble that added costs and legal delays will kill entrepreneurial spirit, while officials in Nairobi and Manila welcome a path to avoid being spectators again. Whether the draft hardens or softens in committee will shape the next dilemma: monopoly or mutualism in helium-3 supply. Picture an OPEC of outer space. If early movers, say Interlune and the Chinese-led International Lunar Research Station, control the richest veins and coordinate export volumes, they could swing fusion fuel prices the way petrostates once rationed barrels. A cartel might restrict shipments during Earth-side trade wars or use price discounts as geopolitical carrots. Economists at the London School of Economics warn that a buyer's club of reactor nations could soon face a seller's wall, limiting green energy transitions many governments rely on to hit net zero pledges. Yet another model exists: a shared resource clearinghouse, inspired by the International Seabed Authority, where quotas are balanced and royalties flow to a global commons fund. Engineers argue that pooling extraction centers could reduce dust pollution and streamline power grids, lowering costs for everyone. The pending accord leaves both roads open, stating only that excessive concentration should be discouraged, a phrase broad enough to fuel a decade of arbitration. Which path we choose depends on the political will of capitals and the vigilance of citizens who rarely think about space law while refilling morning coffee. That civic stake leads to our final point tonight. If helium-3 becomes the linchpin of fusion, its governance will ripple through light switches, water pumps, and hospital ventilators across the planet. A fair system must marry innovation with inclusion, speed with stewardship, and exploration with equity. Industry should press for clear rules instead of gambling on gray areas. Governments must resist the reflex to weaponize supply chains. Voters need to demand transparency before contracts are stamped orbital secret. The moon's pale dust can brighten or darken human prospects, depending on choices made over the next 4 years. So read up, speak out, and ask your representatives how they plan to vote when the Lunar Governance Accord hits the floor. The countdown to 2027 ticks louder than any rocket engine, and silence this time is complicity. That's our deep investigation. Join us tomorrow for more on The Grind.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Forget the sleek renderings and corporate highlight reels for a moment. Picture instead a lunar dawn in 2032. Two dust-streaked crawler rigs idle nose to nose on the Shackleton crater rim. One carries a Chinese flag under a layer of frost. The other wears Interlune's teal and white livery. Both crews claim the same patch of permanently shadowed ice. Both radios crackle in tense Mandarin-English handoffs, and both mission controllers scroll through the same clause in the Outer Space Treaty, trying to decide whether peaceful purposes includes hydraulic rams. That standoff hasn't happened yet, but the paperwork we have and don't have makes it plausible. The 1967 treaty bans sovereignty in space, yet offers no referee, no fines, no lunar sheriff's badge. The Artemis Accords rid like a mutual admiration society. Sign if you like, ignore if it pinches. And the much-hyped 2027 Lunar Governance Accord still circulates as a bullet point wish list. Reasonable safety zones, transparent activity logs, equitable benefit sharing, vague nouns, hopeful verbs, room enough for any lawyer to plant a flag. Now layer on helium-3 economics. A single ton could ignite a third-wave fusion boom and wipe billions off fossil fuel revenue sheets. No surprise that early movers already practice cartel math. Picture OPEC, but in spacesuits. Interlune, China National Space Administration. Maybe a token European seat to keep appearances. Each pledging just enough supply to spike futures whenever GDP dips back home. Add export quotas, preferential docking fees, and lunar shipping insurance baked into premium contracts, and suddenly every fusion startup on Earth dances to a beat set 380,000 kilometers away. There is another path. An open, audited lunar commons where telemetry, output, and royalties stream in real time to a public ledger. Call it GitHub for moon dirt. Countries or companies that overmine would trip automatic throttles. Any helium-3 sold outside the ledger would be branded gray market, an interplanetary blood diamond. Far-fetched? So was GPS until a handful of defense satellites became a global utility. But openness won't sprout on its own. It demands pre-launch commitments, escrowed enforcement budgets, and maybe an orbital coast guard with the legal right to board a rogue hopper. Which brings us back to that crater rim at Shackleton. The way we handle the first real overlap between harvest zones will set the norm for the next 50 years. Either we default to finders keepers, miners weeper, or we prove that governance can land on time, plant deeper roots than any flag, and still let innovators turn a profit. The clock is loud. Interlune's prospect drill ships in 27. China's Chang'e 8 dusts off a landing pad the same year. The Governance Accord deadline hits just months later. So the homework, dear listeners, is not for distant diplomats. It's for us. Ask your lawmaker why lunar clauses haven't made it into the next trade bill. Ask your favorite fusion startup whether its business model relies on exclusive off-world leases or on transparent auctions. And ask every space agency press officer what "for all humanity" means when the payload manifest lists only corporate shareholders. History warns us that frontiers harden fast. The first railway gauge sets the track width for a continent. The first telecom cable buries patent law into seabeds. The first lunar escrow contract, or lack of one, will echo through boardrooms long after the current batch of astronauts retire. If we fumble this, tomorrow's kids may learn about helium-3 cartels in the same breath as oil embargoes and rare earth chokeholds. If we nail it, the moon becomes a case study in shared prosperity rather than zero-sum mining. Choose your sequel. The script is being drafted now, not by Hollywood, but by technocrats in fluorescent conference rooms. Make sure the credits roll with more names than the usual few, and with benefits that reach farther than the next quarterly report. Because the distance between a thin treaty and a thick monopoly is about the width of a lunar safety zone, narrow enough to cross in one heated radio exchange. And that's where we leave tonight's deep dive. Keep your telescope steady, your policy radar sharper, and your sense of ownership on a long leash. The next rush for riches could still write a better chapter if we bother to pick up the pen. This is Art Grindstone signing off from the grind. Join us tomorrow night, same mic, same edge of the map. Until then, stay curious and stay prepared.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.